What do improvisation, swing, the blues have in common with Unitarian Universalist theology? Theology is a word we use for what we think about the divine and how we think about human beings and the human condition and the planet we live on and the relationship between the humans and the divine and the planet and what we're supposed to do while we're here. As I said before, Unitarian Universalist theology is pretty jazzy. What do I mean by that? Well, jazz is based on the principle that an infinite number of melodies can be said to fit any particular chord progression of any song. Now, if you're not a musician and if you don't know what a chord progression is, just kind of let it go over your head because I don't have time to explain it. But you'll understand the rest of it. A song has a certain structure and certain chords, and there are lots of melodies that can fit that chord. And in jazz, each person is invited to improvise a melody that fits those chords at a certain point in the song. And if you want the song to go on a really long time, everybody in the band might have an improvisation opportunity. You'll find surprising dissonances, which is a musical term that just means doesn't really seem to go together, and surprising harmonies. And one of the good things about jazz is that if you're listening and you just can't stand what's going on right now, just wait a minute and it'll change. You're going to live through this. The next thing will be okay. And UUs, which is what we call Unitarian Universalists for short, UUs have some basic structures around which we weave our infinite thought patterns and belief patterns. Those are called our 7 principles, and they are things like the worth and dignity of every human. They are things like the responsible search for truth and meaning. We search for truth, but it needs to be responsible. We believe that the democratic process is the way to get things done. We believe that compassion and justice are in some way compatible and that we should hold them both in mind at the same time. And we believe that justice is for everybody, not just a select few. A few years ago, the UU World, which is the name of our UU magazine, had an article in it about jazz and UU theology by its editor, Tom Stites. And I've been thinking about it ever since. He said things like, everybody is welcome in jazz, and everybody's welcome in Unitarian Universalist theology. And people are welcome to improvise. I've just lost. I'm going to have to improvise. Yeah, exactly. Everybody's welcome to improvise. So, in jazz, improvise means to spontaneously compose a melody as you play it. So, the jazz musicians who are improvising, they haven't practiced that in their apartment before they get to the gig. They are in the music and they're feeling the music and they're making up the music as they play it. Otherwise, it's not improv. See? And Unitarian Universalists, sometimes we have to improvise because we don't have a strict code that says, in this situation, do this, in this situation, do this, in this situation, think this. So we've got to improvise. And improvisation in jazz or in life is scary. It takes courage because you have to take responsibility for what you play. Yeah, and some of what you play works really well, and some of what you play just doesn't work at all. Am I right? And you can tell pretty instantly whether it worked or not. One good thing I hear from musicians that you're always just a half step away from what will work. So just slide up a little bit, you'll be all right. I think it's probably like that in life too, although I'd have to give that some more thought before I wanted to say it, because I'm improvising now, so. A few years ago on road trips, Kaya and I would read aloud to each other from a book called To a Young Jazz Musician, Letters from the Road, by a man named Wynton Marsalis, great jazz musician. He grew up in New Orleans. He studied at Juilliard, and now he's the artistic director for jazz at the Lincoln Center. He's about as high up as you can get. And his book is fabulous, and it has about 1,000 sermons in it. He says, to improvise means to find your own way of intelligently using what you have in order to improve your environment. To swing means to maintain equilibrium with elegance, to be resilient. And to play the blues means that no matter how tragic a situation may be, you have the ability to conquer it with style. The blues recognizes the importance of human will. It says, I'm down now, but I can get up again. He said, if you just say, I'm down, I might as well stay down, that's just blues. What makes it the blues is the get up part. Tom Stites in his article said both jazz and Unitarian Universalism are deeply democratic in that everybody has a voice and everybody has to feel the music. Everybody has to hold the big picture in mind while playing your own individual part. And you have to know enough about your part in order to improvise on it if you're not going to just follow directions. So first you just follow directions, and then once you know what you're doing, then you start improvising. So it involves both responsibility and freedom, because while improvisation is always welcome, skillful improvisation is much more appreciated. So you have to be responsible to bring something good, a good contribution to the table once you start playing with the band. And as people in this church move from being visitors to being frequent visitors to being almost members to experienced members, you move from just listening to the music to being part of the band. Does that make sense? Great. You develop more and more of an understanding of what the whole group is doing. And ideally, if you're going to start improvising, you feel the beat of the whole thing in your bones. And you can follow the chord changes, and you can remember what song you're playing. This is the song we're playing. Some people want to go off and improvise over here. They can, but it's more helpful for the group as a whole if we all remember what song we're playing. You have to listen to the other players with humility. That's a word Marsalis uses to talk about the masters of improvisation. You have to listen with humility, knowing that one part is no more important than another, and that you achieve mastery when you can listen with enough humility to back off when it's not your turn and support the other people in their sound. And then when it's your turn to come forward and bring all your joy and your sorrow and your skill to what you're bringing into the melody. What Marsalis tells everyone is play with each other, stay encouraged, and keep practicing. That's it in a nutshell. And I think if there were a church that didn't have a mission statement that it had already decided on, that this would be a good one. Play with each other, stay encouraged, keep practicing. We're playing the music of our lives. We bring our music into the room together. Sometimes there's discord and sometimes there's harmony. It's always surprising. Liberal religion says that when we come together to try to get something done and we bring all our differences, with respect into the same room, we summon the holy. I find the harmonic surprises to be miraculous in church life. We hear something we've never heard before, or in a way we've never heard it. We think things we've never thought before. We feel things we hadn't felt before, or we feel things that we love to feel. And we may feel understood here, or we may feel befriended here, or liberated, or challenged, or healed. We may learn about ourselves. We may learn to say, that's not me. I'm not really interested in that, but this is me. I'm really interested in this. Or, no, I don't want to do that, but yes, I want to do this. Or, yes, I can do this much of this, but that much is too much. And we learn about ourselves that way. And our lives become pretty jazzy and improvisational because of the lack of fear of hell. We don't have to fear hell, so we can make mistakes. We don't have to think, if I don't think correctly or behave correctly, God, who loves me, is going to send me straight to hell. And do things to me that we wouldn't do to our children, or otherwise we'd be thrown in jail. Things get to make sense, and we get to push for things to make sense here without fear of going to hell for it. And so we can experiment, and we can make mistakes, and we can live vivid and colorful lives and be ethical people and demand that things hang together for us. Well, all the same pitfalls face us as Unitarian Universalists that face jazz musicians. Too much individuality leads us to dominate when we should step back, to feel that what we have to say is the most important thing. We might have a little too much confidence in our own flash and understanding and gradually cease being learners. That's a tragedy. Marsalis says the bottom line is practice. Always be practicing something. Never think you don't have to go back and practice the basics. And he has other P's too. He has 4 P's. Practice is the first one. The second one is patience. You're going to need patience because, number one, you're not going to know how to do this completely, perfectly, right at first. And many of us, as I've said before, hate to do things we're not good at. And so we have to be willing to just not be good at something. We have to be willing to practice until we're better. And we have to have patience with the other musicians in the band, because at any given moment, we might be more serious about the music than they are. And we have to be patient with those who aren't as serious about it as we are. Persistence is the third P. He says, you need persistence because playing jazz is a life replete with difficulties and self-doubt, and it never goes away. There's always self-doubt. It never goes away. Once you get on this road, you're going to be on it. It won't get easier. It doesn't matter if your popularity goes up or if you make money. The act of creation and remaining invigorated to create cannot be purchased or hyped. Gravity never stops pushing, and persistence is the way to push back. Gravity never stops pushing. The last P is productivity. What you do is what you will do. Let me unpack that because it's kind of Buddhist and it's a little too simple. What you do is what you do, not what you wish you could do, what you talk about doing, what you plan to do, what you ought to do, what your friends are doing, what you admire somebody else for doing. None of that is doing. Writing about doing it is not doing. Doing is doing. Marsalis talks about his football life in Louisiana, where they are as serious about football as we are in Texas. He says, you can talk big, you can think you're the man, but when you're tired, when you're under attack, And when you have fumbled, that's where what you're made of shows. When you're tired, when you're under attack, when you've fumbled, that's where what you're made of shows. And he said there was a guy on the team who would just get in your face and ruthlessly encourage you. I love that phrase, ruthlessly encourage you. And he would get in your face and say, let's see what you're made of now. We'll see what we're made of now. My wish for us is that we practice until we're good at improvising, finding our own way of intelligently using what we have in order to improve our environment. At swing, maintaining equilibrium with elegance. And at playing the blues, so that no matter how tragic a situation seems to be, or may in fact be, we have the capacity to conquer it with style.